Hi guys, in this short lecture what we'll be talking about are the structures and functions of the heart. So we'll dive right in. What we need to first talk about is the atrium. So there's different different structures. Each one of these structures has a specific function that's crucial for the circulatory system, and that's what the heart is a part of, is the circulatory system. So the atrium are folded chambers and they are responsible for storage. Now, there's two chambers of the heart. So if we were to split the heart up into four chambers, up top here we would have atrium, and down here we would have the ventricles. Now, this would actually be the right side of the heart on a diagram, and this would be the left. And I know it's backwards, but it's as if we were looking at the patient, and they were laying flat with their back down on an operating table, and we were a doctor facing them, so we would be face to face. So as they're down, laying upside down to operate on them, their left side would be over here. Okay, so these are four chambers of the heart. There's the right side of the heart with an atrium and a ventricle, and the left side with the atrium and a ventricle. So the ventricle's job is, they are muscular chambers and they're used for pumping. And they'll be really important. We'll talk about these a little further in other screencasts. So there are also valves. Now there's four valves in the heart that you'll need to know. You don't need to know the names, so you don't need to know atrioventricular or semilunar, but you do need to know what they do and where they're located. So these are just flaps that are going to essentially control the direction of blood flow. So they're going to open and then slam shut, and that's what they're responsible for. The next part of the heart is the septum, and the septum is going to separate both sides, the left and the right side of the heart. Now, we have these things called pulmonary arteries and veins. Now, typically what we know is that pulmonary means lungs, and arteries move away from the heart, whereas veins move towards the heart. So when you think of pulmonary, think of the lungs. And so these are a little backwards. Is typically what happens is in arteries there's oxygenated blood under high pressure moving away from the heart, and veins there's typically deoxygenated blood moving towards the heart. But in the case of the pulmonary artery and veins, the pulmonary artery is actually going to transport deoxygenated blood up to the lungs, and then from there the pulmonary vein is going to transport oxygenated blood back to the heart. So this is the one case in the body where it's this oxygenated, deoxygenated versus arteries and veins works differently. So now coronary arteries and veins actually refer to the heart. So I have a diagram over here. So if you just take a look what I'm circling, these are coronary arteries. And as we zoom in on this image, you can actually see the coronary arteries and veins on the heart. And so these are the ones that service the heart with oxygen and basically keep the tissue alive. Now, the vena cava, these two structures right here, and the aorta are both blood vessels. And, sorry, my writing's bad. And so what these are going to do is they're going to bring blood into the heart and pump blood out of the heart. So the vena cava is going to bring blood from the body, deoxygenated. It's going to move it into this right atrium here. The aorta is going to take oxygenated blood under high pressure, and this is really important, and it's going to move blood out of the heart. Okay, so on the next slide, what we'll actually look at is a little diagram of the heart itself. So if you take a look here, what you're going to notice is that the heart has, and we'll talk about the pathway of blood, the blue is going to represent the vena cava or deoxygenated blood. You can see through the pulmonary artery. And I'm just going to track the pathway. So we're going to take the blood and it's going to move through here, through the vena cava, from the inferior or superior. It's going to move into the right atrium, so that storage chamber. And now what's going to happen is this AV valve located right there where I've circled, it's going to open and allow blood to flow into the right ventricle. Now the ventricle's job is to pump, so it's going to pump the blood up through this semilunar valve, out the pulmonary artery, still deoxygenated, up to the lungs. Now when it goes up to the lungs, it's going to collect oxygen, and it's going to diffuse into the blood. So now it's going to move back in this direction from the lungs through the pulmonary vein towards the heart, and it's going to go into that storage, the left atrium. Now when it goes in the left atrium, same concept, through the AV valve into the left ventricle. Then it's going to move through the semilunar valve and then out the aorta and pump high pressurized oxygenated blood to the body. Now important to note, there's a valve here, the semilunar, and a valve here, but you do not need to know the names. You just need to know what they do, and you need to know where they're located. Now notice this section here, all down here, is much more muscular than this section over here. That's because the left side pumps under high pressure because of the oxygen and such. So it's much more muscular. So if you want to identify the left side of the heart, the side that the ventricle is more muscular would be the left side. Now the last little structure that I'm going to talk about is right here, and this is called the septum, and it's going to separate the right and the left chambers of the heart. So that's the section right here is going to separate, and that's your septum. So again, blood vessel here, okay, your vena cava, and then your aorta is a blood vessel as well that's going to transport blood away from the heart, okay. Pulmonary arteries are blood vessels, and pulmonary veins. So hopefully you found this screencast beneficial and you've developed understanding of this concept or of the heart and its contribution to the circulatory system. We'll see you on the next screencast. Thanks.